Welcome back to Philosophy and Ethics in Games, the series where I break down the choices in some of my favorite games and figure out which decision is the right one. I'm Josh Bearheart Hawk, and in this episode, we're diving back into TellTale Games' The Walking Dead, this time making our way into Season 2. In case you missed the previous episodes, I've linked a playlist in the description below. As I continue to break down the series, I'll add new videos to the playlist so you can find them all in one place. Season 2, Episode 1 of TellTale Games The Walking Dead dropped just in time for Christmas in 2013. Initial reviews of the episode and overall season were positive, though there has since been some debate and controversy around the story in general. For this video, as in previous iterations, I'll be staying focused on the choices in the game and what would be right and wrong morally. But once we're officially wrapping up the series in Season 4, I'll be coming back to talk more about the game, including the writing and storytelling. Season 2 opens a few months after the end of Season 1. With Lee no longer in the picture, we take up the reins as Clementine, and we see her, a very pregnant Krista, and Omid making their way toward what remains of a public restroom. While the two adults make their way into the men's restroom, Clem follows Omid's suggestion and heads to the door into the women's side. Right away, this seems odd because you would think that they would want to clear the building, making sure no one was hiding inside, before going in. As capable as Clementine is, seeing neither adult take a moment to check the building before she entered it alone is unnerving. That qualm aside, it also strikes me as incredibly odd that they didn't take turns while someone kept watch. They've been together for a while, and they've all seen the problems that can arise when their guard is dropped. Why wouldn't they be taking what should be some basic precautions at this point? Their lack of vigilance bites them, as Clementine finds herself at the wrong end of her own gun when a teen girl enters the restroom she had been cleaning up in. Trying to hide doesn't work, as the girl finds you and forces you out of the stall that you're in. And things just get worse when Omid comes in to see if Clem is okay. Panicking, the young woman turns and fires a shot without even stopping to think, and Omid falls to the floor just as Krista enters. Without hesitation, Krista points her rifle at the young woman and fires a shot, killing the girl as Clementine looks on in shock. And that whole sequence of events is really harder on Clementine than it is for the player, as we weren't given any kind of choice about picking up the gun or leaving it on the counter. It's a decision that, for Clem's part, makes sense, as she was only going to retrieve her water bottle. Grabbing the gun, or at least keeping it within arm's reach, would be easy to forget as she probably felt relatively safe. But it was also a stupid mistake in hindsight because she would have been carrying and taking care of a gun for a while at that point. But we don't get to see the direct fallout as the scene fades and we're sent forward 16 months, reconnecting with Clementine and Krista as they try in vain to get a fire going in what appears to be a light rain shower. Krista is no longer pregnant, but there's no sign of a child, and we can speculate that something happened to it either before or shortly after being born. The relationship between Krista and Clem seems to be strained, but we can't be sure if this is due to recent circumstances or the long-term fallout of Omid's death. A short conversation between them references the cold and reveals that they are attempting to reach a settlement known as Wellington. Wellington will play a bigger role later, but before they get too far into talking about that, Krista wanders off in search of wood, and you get the chance to look around the camp. A picture of Lee, taken from the drugstore in Season 1, and a drawing made by Duck can be found in Clem's backpack as you look around for a lighter. It's these items that really drive home how much Clementine has lost over the course of the first couple of years in this new world. As a side note, it's worth mentioning that the picture of Lee that she has was dropped to the ground by him when Carly surprised him. He might have picked it back up, but I like to think that Clem grabbed it as a way to keep Lee close even when he was out scavenging. Voices in the distance draw Clementine into the dark woods, and she soon stumbles upon Krista being harassed by a group of men. Attempting to distract the men, Clem finds herself running from them as a gunshot rings out behind her. After a race through the dark and a close call with some zombies, Clementine falls down an embankment into a raging river. Somehow surviving the rapids, she wakes to find the sun shining as the current has carried her into the morning, some unknown distance downstream. Making her way Down a nearby path, she comes across a sign that seems to be perfectly placed to remind her that zombies aren't the only things to watch out for in the woods. With a heightened awareness, she plods on and soon finds a furry, four-legged companion in the form of a dog named Sam. His family was camped nearby at some point, and you can find evidence that they survived for a short while in the woods before something ended all of their lives, leaving Sam alone with no one to feed or pet him. Clementine can play frisbee with her new best buddy, but a can of food comes between them. Like Clem, it's likely been a while since Sam had anything good to eat, and when she shares a can of beans she finds in the trash with him, he tries to take more than his share. Clem drops the can, and Sam attacks her when she tries to pick it up, biting her arm and leading to one of the saddest moments of the episode as Sam ends up impaled on some spikes. Part of me really wishes there would have been a way to keep Sam around, as I personally love canine companions. But it isn't possible here, and you have a choice to make. You can let Sam suffer as he slowly dies on the spikes, or you can put him down using a pocket knife you retrieved from the zombified remains of one of his former owners. The humane thing to do here would be to end his suffering. No animal, or person for that matter, should have to suffer like that. After putting the dog down, Clementine resumes her search for Krista, or at least for some sign of an ally. But the woods are crawling with zombies, and she's soon surrounded by the dead. Weak from a lack of food, a ride down a raging river, and now a dog bite on her arm, she nearly passes out and eventually finds herself in a fist fight with a hungry corpse. Her story probably would have ended there if not for the kindness of strangers. As her last ounce of strength is draining, a blade severs the head of the zombie lying on top of her. A man reaches down and frees her before helping her up as arrows being shot by another man take down the zombies in the area. When the dust settles, Clem finds herself in the arms of the younger of the two, who introduces himself as Luke. He and his companion, Pete, stepped in to help, but they seemed more concerned about who Clementine might have been with. Before they can ask too many questions, though, Luke notices the bite on Clementine's arm and drops her without a second thought. She tells them it was a dog bite, but they aren't entirely convinced, even as they agree to let her come back with them to the cabin that their group is staying at. They're nearly there when she passes out, and the sound of several voices arguing about what to do with her brings her back to consciousness. The group is divided, especially as she's only a child, but it isn't just the bite they're worried about. This is the first time we hear them mention the name Carver, but it won't be the last. Some members of the group are worried that Clementine might be a part of another group they're trying to avoid. And they all have doubts about the possibility that a dog bit her. And this is really the first time in the series we're coming in as a true outsider. The closest we've experienced to anything like this is when Lee, Clementine, Kenny, Katja, and Duck were pulled into the drugstore in Macon. But in that circumstance, it was a combination of groups. We've been on the other side of things when trying to figure out what to do with Ben at the motor inn, but he wasn't bit in that instance. Now, it's our turn to ask a group to help us in an impossible situation. After some back and forth, they decide to lock Clementine up in a shed and wait until morning. The argument is that if the bite was from a zombie, she'd develop a fever overnight and they'd know that they need to kill her. But there's a major problem with that thought. Bites from animals can easily become infected, and quick treatment is almost always needed to make sure that doesn't happen. An infection can take root in as little as 8 hours, with proper cleaning and care of the wound being the best way to prevent any issues. Putting ourselves in the shoes of the group, it's understandable that they would hesitate to bring Clementine in and use medical supplies on what could be a fatal bite from a zombie. As we've discussed in other situations, supplies are limited, and using even a small amount on someone who isn't going to live either way is not smart. But would locking her in a shed be better? The reasonable thing to do here would be to clean up the wound using something basic like water and try to determine for sure what bit her. At a minimum, she should be kept in the house under close surveillance and given whatever can be spared. If that's too much, then she should be sent away or killed on the spot. As drastic as either of those options may be, they're both more humane than locking her in a cold shed overnight with a wound that could prove to be fatal even if it didn't come from a zombie. But the group elects to lock her away, and it isn't long before she's breaking out of the shed and into the cabin, in search of basic medical supplies. So now we've gone from begging for help to stealing, an action we've condemned people for in the past. And that's where this group ultimately proves to be more forgiving. After stealing the supplies she needs, with the help of several members inside the cabin, Clem is able to clean and suture her own wound, before a zombie surprises her by coming through a hole in the shed that she used to escape. She's finishing it off as the group opens the doors behind her.
Tough as nails.
Are you all right?
I'm still not bitten.
Some of them seem to feel guilty for leaving her out there, and some are more concerned with how she got the supplies. After going into the cabin and having our patchwork assessed by Carlos, we're treated to what is probably Clem's first good meal in weeks. We find out a little bit more about the group as she gets a chance to chat with Luke, and Nick even comes in at one point to apologize for nearly shooting her when she showed up. And let's take a minute here to look at the group from the outside, because this is the first time we've really had the chance to see another group from Clementine's eyes since everything went sideways in Savannah. We've got Luke and Pete, the first members we meet, and two of the more level-headed people we've seen. Then there's Nick, who seems very unsure of himself and whose introduction includes trying to shoot Clem. We find out he was so rough on Clem at first because he'd lost his mother to a bite victim they had been trying to help, and he still blames himself for not doing more in that instance. Alvin helps Clementine by getting her some bandages and a juice box after trying to walk a fine line between putting her in the shed and letting her in the house. Some pushing is required to get him to do this, but it's clear that deep down he really wants to do something to help Clem, despite the scolding he gets from his wife, Rebecca. Rebecca is extremely hot-headed and has clearly been through a lot. She's also pregnant, and while looking through the house for medical supplies, Clementine overhears her in the bathroom, praying that Alvin is the father of the baby. Carlos is the doctor who inspects the bite, but his concern lies less with Clementine's predicament and more on his daughter Sarah. He's been trying to shelter Sarah from the world, hiding as much as he can from her and doing his best to keep her safe. After a good meal and a little rest, Clementine heads out with Pete and Nick at first light to check some fish traps that they'd set up in a nearby creek. As they approach the shore, they discover a massacre. Several bodies are strewn about the bank, with some lying on an island in the middle of the small flow. While investigating, Clementine recognizes one of the men as part of the group that was attacking Krista. He's on the brink of death, and you have the option to give him some water in his final moments, or let him continue suffering. It's clear from the prior interaction we had with him, as short as it was, that he's likely not a very good person. Not only that, he hasn't got more than a few moments left, and giving him anything would be a waste. No matter what you decide, the silence of the moment is interrupted by Pete screaming from the opposite shore as he shoots a zombie that was grabbing his ankle. It's clear something happened, but you've only got a few seconds to react as the gunshot brings the dead from all around. You have one last decision: go with Pete or run back to Nick. Pete seems to be the one more in need of help, and sure enough, Nick leaves you and Pete alone as he runs away when the horde gets to be too much for him. And that's where the episode wraps up. So far, the choices in Season 2 have been much more subtle than those in Season 1. I think there's a reason for that, but I'm saving those thoughts for the wrap-up video I mentioned in the opening. But while Episode 1 was full of new faces, Episode 2 is where we welcome back an old friend. But that's for next week. For now, I want to thank you all for the great comments you've been leaving. I love getting to see what choices you've made in your playthroughs, and what you think about the morality of the decisions the game presents. At the end of the day, this series is really about giving our choices and decisions the thought and reflection they deserve. We can learn a lot about ourselves by thinking about why we chose to do something, like feed the dog in this episode, or try to save a character that we didn't really like in another. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like down below and share it. You can also subscribe or even join the channel as a member. I've also got a Patreon where I share stories I've written in addition to other cool stuff, so check that out if it sounds interesting. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.